Hey everybody, I'm here with David from Cha Cha Boom, um, surf exotica Latin feeling intro band. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing great, Ryan. It's a pleasure to meet you, and it's an honor to be on your show.
It is. I mean, the only way I know. Oh, thank you, by the way. Yeah, the only way I know you is if I saw you on Instagram, and I've been following you.
Yeah.
Um, and what I'm hearing is pretty crazy. Like, is you guys are a tight unit, and I was really impressed with just what I heard, and I searched as much as I could.
Well, that's awesome. So I've been trying to put together a surf band since the '90s, and had various levels of success with that, mostly failure. And then I ended up hooking up with some guys here in New Jersey about 10, 15 years ago. And they were pretty serious about rehearsing and performing. And so I learned a lot. They had a really great guitarist. It was a two guitar band. And the other guitarist was one of those guys that could just play anything, any style of music. As a matter of fact,
Yeah,
his surf band was like one of 8 bands that he was in. He had like really eclectic taste. So he had like the Allman Brothers tribute band, and he had like a horn band. But when it came to surf music, he said to me, and I'll never forget this. He said, "It's already perfect like it is." So,
yeah,
so we didn't want to change anything. We wanted to sound as much as we could like the songs we loved and like the bands we grew up listening to. So that was a great learning experience. The one thing that did end up happening was when we were on the bill with other bands, we'd all be playing the same songs,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you're at you're watching the open band, and they've played Surf Rider, Diamond Head, and Mizzaloo, and you're like, man, what's left for us, And so
Right.
I figured, I was like, all right, for my next project, it's going to be something a little different. I want to play the songs nobody else is playing, um, and and also, I also have eclectic musical taste. So how do I incorporate that into this surf thing? Because surf genre is pretty voracious, right? I mean, it means different things to different people. Some people can say like, well, you know, surf. Like when you say to somebody on the street, hey, do you like surf music? They might say, I don't know what you're talking about, or they might say, oh, you mean like the Beach
Absolutely.
Boys, right? The Beach
Right,
Boys,
right.
and they're like, yeah, yeah, the Beach Boys are great, but that's not what I do.
That's
And
beach
then
music.
that's beach music, right? Not surf music, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, and then maybe someone will say like the Ventures, and to me, I'll say like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. But to like a purist, they might be like, well, the Ventures weren't really a surf band, or they had some surf songs, or they had one or two surf albums, but it's a lot easier to say surf band than instrumental rock band or whatever label you want
Right.
to attach to it.
And then you even have
So
more of an explanation to give.
yeah, right. The
Mhm.
conversation goes much longer than the other person is comfortable with. I mean, I could talk about that all day, but most people
Yeah.
can't or don't want to. So once you've broadened the horizons like that, I looked to a group like the Ventures, and they were able to incorporate so many different tunes, different styles of music into their paradigm. So that was a super big influence on me. Plus, growing up, I was always aware of the Ventures. We used to have like one of those stations in New York, New Jersey area. They call it like a golden oldies station,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right? So you hear like Elvis, and then you'd hear like Peggy Lee or something, and then all of a sudden you'd hear Pipeline by the Chantays, or you know, Walk Don't Run or Wipeout or something like that. So I was always aware of the genre of surf music, and I always thought it sounded super cool. Um, and so that was my kind of introduction to it, and it was always sort of in the atmosphere. And then if you're a fan of rock, and especially if you're a fan of guitar, and you get in the guitar magazines, you hear about people like Dick Dale, you know, and like eventually, you know, you hear Mizzaloo, and you're like, wow, what is this,
Yeah.
you know? And then I remember trying to being so in love with Mizzaloo, trying to go and track down, well, where did that come from, you know? And then found like there were versions, you know, there's lyrics to Mizzaloo, you know, they're not in
Oh yeah.
English, right? But like I heard versions in like Greek, you know, Armenian, you know, and I was like, wow, you know, this style of music can really incorporate anything
Yeah. The
and make it
Armenian version is
rock.
like 100 years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, I have some very close Armenian friends, and I'd go to parties and hang out with them, and all of a sudden Mizzaloo would come on, you know, like that, the old version, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh wow, I was like, this is incredible, you know, and kudos to Dick Dale. I mean, he really pulled it off, you know, and in a similar way, you know, the Ventures hopped on a lot of like Latin tunes, like popular Latin tunes, like the 40s
Yeah.
and 50s, right? So stuff like Perfidia, you know, and
yeah.
they venturized it, you know, and I was like, oh, this is the plan going forward. This is what I'm interested in, because I also had an interest and a love for all different kinds of music, but also specifically for Latin music. As a matter of fact, there was years when I hardly picked up a guitar, and I just took conga lessons for like 4 years.
Really?
Absolutely. That was great. I mean, I didn't get great at it. You know, I ended up scurrying back to guitar, which is, you know, probably
I know
great
the
for my
feeling
neighbors. Did you have a similar thing ever?
Well, I always wanted to be a drummer, but
Yeah.
guitar always seemed to have a better feel for me.
Same here. I remember, you know, there was a chance to join the like the school band in my grade school. This is back in Valley Stream, Long Island, and and I didn't, you know, and then I look back on it, it was like, oh man, that was my chance to, you know,
Yeah.
learn drums. But I did find in the attic a guitar and amp that belonged to the late brother of my stepfather, and it was so I don't know what year he died, but this equipment was like from 1964 or 65 or something. It was like, it was a Swedish Hagstrom 3. It was red. It was gorgeous. It was like full of switches and dials and knobs. I didn't even know what half of them did. It was a Gibson Explorer amp, which was kind of sort of their version of like maybe a Princeton or maybe a Deluxe. And he had an original Maestro fuzz tone. And by the way, I mean, I was also lucky to grow up around not only people that appreciated music, but kind of collected it. So, like, growing up, there was always music in the house. And my father had a wild record collection, you know, not just records, but, you know, there were LPs of 45s, there was reel-to-reels. I remember finding my dad had Ventures, the colorful Ventures on reel-to-reel, and I just never figured out, you know, it's kind of a pain in the ass for me to do
It
real,
is.
like listen
Once
to
you
real.
learn how to feed it, it's fun, but it's a pain in the ass to feed it.
It was a learning curve, I guess. I just gave up too easily. But we also had, you know, 8 tracks and stuff like that. And when I was looking through, I would always just look through I could spend an entire day just, you know, rummaging through my dad's collection. And I found in his 45s and his singles, he had Bombora by the Atlantics. So, you know, he was into surf enough to, you know, latch onto that at the time, and there was stuff like Harlem Nocturne by the Vicons. Yeah, and great tune, you know, and you know, and then I became aware of stuff like Link Ray. So I was really lucky in that respect, in that aspect, and then, you know, one really influential thing for me was, you know, I mean, it's before the internet. A lot of what kind of fed the, I don't know, cultural literacy was like, what magazines you read or what movies or TV shows you watched and listened to, right?
All right.
So like I remember growing up, like the first time I ever heard Blondie was probably on an episode of BJ and the Bear,
Oh shit.
right?
Well,
One way or another.
that was my show when I was a kid.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I would hate to watch it now because it's probably super not like we remember it,
No,
It's
no,
probably
I
a
know
lot
what
of
you mean.
cringy
Yeah,
shit on there.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But they would always have like, there'd be they always had to go up against a motorcycle gang, so they would always play like Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf,
Yeah.
and so I was like also very heavily into, classic rock and then hard rock and then heavy metal and onto thrash metal and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, double horns all the way. I remember being 13 years old and 13, 14 and meeting, Slayer and Metallica, waiting online for them to sign my record. And I just remembered the disappointed look on their face when they were like, oh, these are our fans. These guys, these nerds.
Really?
That was the impression I got. They were like, yeah,
Wow.
these bunch of pudgy glasses wearing, spectacled, zit-faced 13-year-olds sign the record and get out of here.
That was really the case though. Like I was one of those guys that went that I was like a scrawny little kid with long hair.
Yeah.
But I was a guitar player, so I knew how to play all those songs. So I had lots and lots of questions, like how do you play that one, or how do you play, like why am I not playing this one right?
I wish I would have had the courage to maybe ask him some questions, but it was more like an assembly line: sign next, sign next.
Yeah, that sucks.
And the only I'll tell you who was cool was the drummer, Dave Lombardo from Slayer. At least,
yeah, he seems like he would be.
He was super cool. Latin, by the way. He's Cuban.
That's right. Yeah.
And they had just put on in the record store that they were appearing in. They put on the new Venom record. Just came out that week, and me and my friends were singing along and shouting all the lyrics. And he was like, "How do you know this song? Like this came out yesterday. How do you guys know it? So at least he appreciated like a true fan.
So. He's like, oh my god, these guys were darking out just like me.
Yeah, right. Yes, right. Yeah,
because I know like a lot of musicians. I talk to a lot of musicians, and they're like a lot of them are like me when they go down the rabbit hole, and they just like they hear one song and then they want to hear like more and more and more and more.
Oh sure, yeah, absolutely. It's like I've never been one for doing homework, but like give me a song I'm interested in, and like I want to know everything about it. And
exactly.
So that happened with surf, but it also happened with Latin music and and a bunch of other genres. So I'd already been aware of like Pipeline, Walk Don't Run, Wipeout, that kind of thing. But like movie wise, I remember there was the Back to the Beach movie where Stevie Ray Vaughan and Dick Dale are teaming up on their version of Pipeline, right?
Wild.
Yeah, pretty wild. And one of the other reasons I was already aware of songs like Pipeline and Wipeout was back in 1979 there was a movie called The Wanderers. You ever see that?
Yes. Yep.
Like a New York gang movie, and I remember distinctly there was one scene where Pipeline was playing, and it was like it was like the sensation when if you watch a Clint Eastwood movie and you hear the Ennio Morricone soundtrack, and already your heart is racing and you're like, what is that, but that's sort of the sound that defines the mood, defines the movie.
Where can I get that?
Where do I find that? And I want more of it, so that's what happened with The Wanderers was you hearing Pipeline in that, and like it's so sort of, maybe because it's instrumental, it's cinematic, and you can just like it can mean whatever you want, in a way, like you have to bring yourself to it.
Yeah.
So
I
that
think
was
I
super
think
helpful.
that's why that opening scene to Pulp Fiction will always be embedded in everybody's head because of that song. You know what I mean?
I remember seeing I think I saw the trailer for Pulp Fiction. So right before it came out, I don't remember what movie I was seeing, but maybe Carlito's Way or something like that. And then seeing the trailer for Pulp Fiction, and I had like two thoughts immediately. One was like, holy shit, like this is my record collection. He's got my record
Yeah,
collection. But then the other, and this is the worst thing, this is the worst aspect of fandom. I was upset that now everybody was going to be let in on the,
yeah, yeah. On the
to join the
secret.
gang.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And I was, and then seeing the movie, and I was like, okay, he's got that Delphi collection, Big Surf, because I'm hearing like the
yeah,
Centurions, and I'm hearing a whole bunch of stuff, the Bullwinkle Part Two, and
yeah.
all
I
that kind
was
of
just,
stuff.
I was like, dang, like my uncles used to play this music when they were in high school. Like, I don't mean just play it. I mean, they were in bands. Like,
Yeah, wow.
my uncle was in a band called Johnny and the Patriots, and he's just this little kid, and he's playing surf. And I'm just like, they used to play that, like play those old songs for me, and I'd just be like, now it's in a movie. Like, what? Like, it's mind-boggling.
Absolutely. Isn't it funny that like this music was composed and played by 17-year-olds in their garage in San Luis
Yeah,
Obispo or Long Beach or wherever, and here
yeah,
we are on the East Coast in the 40s and 50s, trying to do it exactly like them.
yeah.
It's kind of humorous.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's kind of like how rockabilly was for the East Coast in the South. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, like I would say especially to the South, for the South, but more like even up the East Coast. But I like enough nerding out for me. Like, cause I could do this all day.
that's this.
Um,
I thought this is what we're here for.
it is what we're here for, but we're also here to find out about Cha Cha Boom.
Yeah. Okay. So after the last band kind of dissipated, I was I already had in mind a vision of the kind of band I wanted to be in, the kind of band I wanted to see, and so in addition, and then this is like you said, Pulp Fiction came out, and all of a sudden surf was big again.
Yep.
There even bands that had already been around, all of a sudden I guess we're getting record deals. So
Yeah.
hearing a lot of really cool surf music and a lot of cool instrumental music,
Yeah.
and also around that time, maybe a year or two after that, the Buena Vista Social Club
Yeah.
phenomena kind of came out, and in its wake there was that record that Raikuda did with Manuel Galvan. What the hell is it called? But it's basically it's like Cuban instrumental. It's surf music really, because it's
Yeah.
played the guitar, Reverb's vibrato guitar is the main instrument, and I was like, wow, melding these two things, maybe at this point it's three things. That's what I want to do. That's 100% what I want to do. And so I put my feelers out. I put a lot of Craigslist ads out. Went through a couple of members here and there. Some were in it. Some people really weren't with it for that long. But basically, I found a couple of other guys that thought it was a great idea. They thought it would be like fun, and maybe they didn't come from a surf background or certainly a Latin music background. But when I was like, listen to this song, what do you think? And then let's play a version of that, because the song I'm sending them might be, from an orchestra or something, but in a rock and roll context, because that's sort of the guiding principle, This is on
Yep.
rock and roll instruments, you know. And we started off with like a two guitar band, which was cool. But then the other guy skipped, so we were down to a trio, and we're like, okay, like this is really streamlined now. Let's figure out how to do this all with drums, bass, and guitar, and that's it.
Did you prefer it that way?
Well, no. You know, there's a lot of times I wish there was a second guitar. Sometimes I feel like, well, this song is lacking something. If only it had, you know, a second guitar. We play like an astronaut's tune or something like that, and
Yeah.
it really, like, without that, just that guitar, you know, just you know, without that sound, it feels like sometimes maybe it's not all there or it's missing something.
Yeah.
I've thought about also, you know, wouldn't it be cool to have a keyboardist? You know, like I think that would be awesome. Or horns, you know, even horns, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen some bands that have those things, you know, even in the area. I've seen, you know, when we go to New York or shows in New Jersey, some of them will have a keyboardist, they'll have an organ, they'll have, or electric piano. Some of the bands have ones, and it sounds fantastic. And you know, I wouldn't want to rule that out, but right now it's just a trio, and it's working out really well that way.
Good,
so,
good.
So that's all I'm going to think about for now. And
have you heard of Gringo Motel?
No, I haven't.
They're from Philly. They're kind of like mariachi surf. So you got to look them up and check them out. They're really nice guys.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out afterwards. You know, it's not surprising, because when you look at the roots of surf, or, you know, sort of the repertoire, there is so much Latin and Spanish influence. It's sort of, you can't deny it, you know. So this didn't strike me as something weird or like, you know, too super cerebral or something like that. Like there's already a precedent for this, you know, and especially when I got into the old stuff and I started listening to the Sentinels in particular. They always had a Latin thing going on. And, you know, Latina is now, you know, part of the repertoire for a lot of surf bands, you know, and you can hear the clave rhythm going through the entire thing, you know. So sometimes we come at it that way, like, let's take one of these surf tunes that's already Latin and surf. It's already perfect. We don't need to change it in any way. And then on the other hand, maybe we'll take something like a Ventures kind of approach, like here's Besame Mucho or Patricia or one of those old tunes. And obviously we're not the first to cover those, so which is cool, because then I got to listen to a whole bunch of different versions and see what I like about each one, you know. But we've tried to carry that on to things that haven't been covered, like there's some, like we do a Buena Vista social club. We do a couple of their tunes actually, and that was a lot more difficult to arrange, to orchestrate. Excuse me, because, you know, they might not even have a drum set on those. They don't have a drum set on most of those recordings. You know, it's percussion section in a Latin band is like, you know, could be like 3 or 4 guys, and they're each playing, you know, a completely different instrument. You know, one guy's on the congas, one guy's on the bongos, one guy's just playing a scraper, you know. So trying to figure out, and kudos to our drummer for, you know, trying to figure these things out, because another thing was to me, surf music has always sort of represented a kind of dance music, right? Particularly in its origins, you know, that if you go to the Balboa showroom or whatever, you know, kids are dancing to it, you know. My father told me about early rock and roll and the sock hops and all those kind of things, and he was like, man, that was so much fun. So, you know, my idea was always like, what's going to get people tapping their toes, maybe dancing. And we were lucky on our first gig. You know, we played a mix of surf and some Latin tunes, and people were dancing. And I was like, that was all the validation I needed. I was like, we're on the right path. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And we've been trying to just, you know, ride that wave. ever since.
Nice. It's funny you said sock hop because
Yeah.
a lot of people wouldn't know these days what that means. But
Right.
my dad, when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, I'd say, "You want to hang out tonight?" He's like, "I can't. I got to do a hop." And that's what he called it. I got to do a hop.
Yeah.
And of course, I knew it meant sock hop, and like my dad was going to DJ it, and like there was going to be dancing music and shit like that, you know.
Yeah.
So my dad, would work at a radio station all day, and then he'd say, "Yeah, I'm going to go do a hop tonight, for extra money."
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
You know, when my dad, God rest his soul, when he passed away, he was in the hospital for a while, and I'd go to visit him. And I don't remember how I might have been like, "Dad, what are you thinking about now?" And he's like, "I'm thinking about the sock hops." He was like, "That was so much fun." He's like, "You will have no idea what that's like. As a teenager, there's something to do. There's some place to go. You kick off your shoes, and
New music, like brand new, like rock and roll was brand new.
Brand new. The Alan Freed shows, that kind of thing. It's just was that song American Pie? Both kicked off your shoes and danced to the rhythm and blues like that. That was a real thing. It's a shame that there's nothing like that now that I'm aware of. I mean, the closest thing maybe I can think of is like so I've spent a lot of time, at least the last 30 years, in a predominantly Latin community and neighborhood. So it's inescapable. The influence would have been inescapable anyway. But a huge part of the culture is dance. So anytime there's a family gathering, not just family gathering, of course there's going to be dancing at the family gathering. You sort of move everything out of the living room and put up the biggest speakers you can, and you blast that music until the walls are shaking. That's a typical Friday night. But also, that's how people socialize. From all different countries, but the thing they have in common is dancing merengue or dancing salsa or bachata or whatever. And so that's always, being an outsider to that culture, that's always fascinated me. And been like, man, I wish I could, if I could do anything over again, it would be to learn how to dance, man, because that is, you'll never be bored.
Yeah, true.
Never.
True.
Yep.
True. So I'm going to post a link to your Instagram on here. And
great.
I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and just kind of geeking out with me over music. Like, this is the kind of conversation I like to have. I also like to mention your band too.
But I appreciate both equally.
This is just as good because we can do an hour and a half Joe Rogan style on this and go like real deep. And I think we may need to do that one day.
I would look forward to that. Isn't that the coolest thing about fandom is when you meet somebody else that shares some of those interests. You're like, finally somebody I can talk to about this, because otherwise it's just an internal monologue, But I would be, listen, I was so amazed and happy to join you today. I would be glad to come back whenever you like. We don't even have to talk about my band. It can just be about anything, about music in general.
Well, I would like to do that. We have it's a Patreon. I don't know if you know what Patreon is.
Oh, sure.
It's generally people that have been on the show for surf music, and I have some sort of connection with them about mutual interest that has nothing to do with surf. And we do like extra videos for that, so you're welcome to participate in that, and we can even nerd out over surf music or any style in general. And I mean,
I thought we were going to talk more about punk.
To
be honest, I thought we were going to have. I was looking forward to a punk conversation at some point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, thank you so much. There's going to be links to connect with David and Cha Cha Boom below in the description. And thank David for making some killer music.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for everything, man. I really appreciate it.
Please join our Patreon page to get special behind-the-scenes footage and segments exclusive to Patreon, YouTube updates, also a sneak peek of what's coming next week, merch, and also services, free flash drive exclusively for segments in the band.